So if you have questions, if you would type those in to the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen, and then we've got someone who will monitor those. If someone else types a question in that you like, you can like that one. Will give us a better idea as to what issues folks are finding more important. Well, as everybody knows, we're in a terrible situation regarding extreme drought in our area. All of our counties are affected by this, and it's bad to the point where we've had the governor declare different levels of emergency in all 5 of the counties that I represent, and the same with Jared, I know. And this comes after early warm temperatures, got very dry soils, lower than expected runoffs, and a potential threat of a third dry year. And it's exacerbated by the fire situation that we have as well. And these are serious conditions. And as we head into the fire season, it's serious. And as we head into our agricultural, daily agricultural duties, it's serious. So earlier this month, Jared and I had a drought summit with local, state, and county leaders, along with regional experts to discuss the situation. And now we're following up with today's program to provide an opportunity for individuals to hear from the experts and ask those experts questions. We want to have as much federal assistance available to all of you as possible. So today we're going to be joined by experts from USDA who will present on federal agricultural programs and help answer those questions. We have Nuvdeep Dhillon from FSA, California, and we have, Carlos Suarez, California State Conservationist for NRCS, and Jeff Yasui, who's Executive Director for Risk Management Agency, and Patty Gerald, the Acting State Director for Rural Development. And before we get to them, and I'll recognize you in that order to speak, I want to yield to Congressman Huffman to make some opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Congressman Thompson. I am pleased to be joining you here today. And it was just a little over 2 weeks ago that you joined me for a drought summit that we pulled together very quickly after Governor Newsom declared his first drought emergency order for the Russian River Basin. I was glad that we were joined by our state government colleagues, Senator Mike McGuire and Assemblymember Jim Wood, and by Sonoma County Supervisor Linda Hopkins to sort of reflect that whole of government approach to getting folks through what's going to be a really tough summer. And I'm delighted that you're quarterbacking this summit here with a little sharper focus on the agricultural community and the resources that can be brought to bear from the federal government for them. We are certainly fortunate to have you representing the region and to have you in a critical position on the Ways and Means Committee to help oversee the funding and oversight of these programs. So we've got a great lineup of panelists, and I'm delighted that we're going to have a chance to hear from stakeholders. When we did the first summit 2 weeks ago, we were pretty clear that this was the beginning of the conversation, not the end. And it has indeed continued to worsen. The governor expanded his state emergency declaration to include almost every county in the state. About 99% of California is in critical drought condition right now. And I spent most of today in a drought hearing in the Water, Oceans, and Wildlife Subcommittee that I chair, talking about legislation and other policy considerations, not just for the immediate consideration of this drought, which is going to be tough, but for the long haul, trying to figure out how we can make strategic investments to become more resilient as we go forward in what may well be the new normal. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the experts and the officials that you have gathered here today. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and I'm ready to dive in. Thank you.
Jared, thanks so much. We'll go ahead and start, and Nuvdeep, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Congressman. Again, my name is Navdeep Dhillon. I'm the Farm Program Chief for California. And so we're going to go over just a slew of programs that FSA has available for producers in California for drought situations. And here on the first slide, you can see a number of programs that are available. A few of these are out and where you can sign up now and expect to get paid fairly quickly within 2 weeks to 30 days, and others it may take a little while for us to process through. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of each of the programs, and then we'll open up for questions after all the presenters have presented. And then, of course, you are encouraged to contact your local FSA office for additional follow-up and more in-depth discussion. So the first program that we have is our Livestock Forage program. This program is for eligible livestock owners, livestock producers who have livestock as well as grazing land, which is in a drought impacted county. And for us, pretty much all the counties in California are in some sort of a drought D2 or higher, and which means that majority of the counties are eligible for livestock forage program. We look at the severity of the drought based on the U.S. Drought Monitor, and the maximum of 5 months of feed payments are available under this program. You are required to file an application. The sooner you file, the sooner you get paid. However, for 2021, you have until January 30th, 2022 to file an application and get paid. Anything beyond that would be considered late filed, and additional subject you may not get paid. However, in addition to the filing the application, you are required to file an acreage report, provide inventory of your livestock and such, so which the county office can discuss with you in more detail. Of course, you have to be a commercial livestock operation, and your AGI cannot exceed 900,000. And this program does have a payment limitation of 125,000 per person. And so this program is basically more for livestock producers. Next program is our Emergency Livestock program. And this program provides assistance in water transportation. So under ELAP, you can apply for benefits of additional costs that you're incurring for livestock, transporting water to livestock, which you normally would not transport. Again, your county has to be in a D3 or higher, which most of California is. And it gets worse by each week based on the US Drought Monitor. You are required to file a notice of loss within 30 days of the disaster event. So as soon as you start hauling water to your livestock, you need to contact your local FSA office and file an application, file a notice of loss. And then you can file an application for payment at the same time, or you have until the end of January of 2022 to file your application for payment and get paid. You are required to provide supporting documents, which means you have to provide receipts of water hauling if you had a commercial livestock, if you had a commercial operation haul the water, or if you did it yourself, you are required to provide supporting documentation. There's a maximum of 150 calendar days of benefits that's available. Again, you have to be a commercial operation, and there is an AGI. Your AGI cannot exceed 900,000. Next. Our emergency conservation program. Normally, this program is utilized more for wildfires, flooding, and such. There is benefits available for drought under the Emergency Conservation Program. It's designed to make grazing possible on grazing land, provide emergency water to existing systems that serve orchards and vineyards, and it also provides emergency water for confined livestock. This program does not pay for hauling water, but providing water in turn from an existing system. Water hauling is specifically covered under the ELAP program, as I discussed on the earlier slide. Components or practices that are available under ECP for drought is water storage facilities, just troughs and tanks, and developing springs or steeps, and as well as wells, where wells only in cases of where there isn't water available for it at a lesser expense. This is a cost share program. Cost share, depending on the practice, would be cost shared at 75% or 50% of the agency established rates. And these practices cannot be started until approval, and we are required to do environmental review. And what delays, there are sometimes significant delays in the environmental part of this program. And because we do have to consult with our tribes and the State Historical Preservation Office for any additional ground disturbance that's a result of the emergency practices. There is a field visit requirement on the FSA side. There is a payment limitation of $500,000 per person. Next. Emergency Forest Restoration Program. This program is geared towards non-industrial private forest. And again, similar to the ECP program, it does provide for assistance to reestablish an existing stand that was there that was damaged by the drought. In this case, if you have to remove trees or provide site prep, planting materials, all of those are covered practices. If there is fencing, probably should not be impacted by drought, but anything else where we have to provide assistance to reestablish a standing cover that was there prior to, tree cover that was there prior to the drought, we would assist in that. This is also a cost share program. Again, similar to ECP, you can't start the practice until the application is approved in the environmental process. Environmental review is completed as well by FSA. We do require a field visit by an FSA employee or a technical agency, technical assistance provider. And then again, this program again has a payment limitation of $500,000 per person. Both ECP and EFRP do not have an AGI requirement. Okay. Next, please. CRP-Emergency haying and grazing. Our CRP is our Conservation Reserve Program. And so if you have a CRP contract, in cases of drought, you are able to graze the land, which normally you could not graze because under CRP, grazing is not allowed unless it's part of your conservation plan. However, there are limitations in, so if you are going to graze, you are required to contact your FSA office and notify them of that you're wanting to graze. However, there are prohibitions during the primary nesting season. For California, the primary nesting season is April 1st through July 1st. You cannot hay during during the primary nesting season, but you are able to graze. 50% reduction in the normal carry capacity. Again, we want to make sure that you contact your local FSA office before you put any animals on the CRP land. Outside the primary nesting season, you can hay. You can do one cutting and then graze up to 90 days is allowed outside of the primary nesting season. Next. Our tree assistance program is available to rehabilitate or replant vineyards or vines or vineyards or orchards or trees that are destroyed by, in this case, by drought. We've never really used this program more for drought because it requires, you have to meet normal mortality, which is 18%, and that's usually hard to meet. And this is also a cost share program. There is a rate that we pay for vine and for tree, and also for land prep. Deadline to sign up is you have to file a notice of loss within 90 days of the disaster event, or when you decide you want to pull your trees. Again, you can't start the project until the application is approved, environmental review is completed, and we do require a field visit by a FSA loss adjuster. Again, there is an AGI requirement of 900,000 or less to qualify for the tree assistance program. Next. A non-insured crop disaster assistance program. It is it's an insurance program which is available for non-insurable crops. Jeff is with Risk Management Agency. He's going to go over the provisions for insurable crops. So NAP is for non-insurable crops. Again, you have to have purchased coverage for the year of disaster. So if you already do not have coverage for under NAP for the current year's drought, you would not be eligible for a payment. NAP does offer a buy-up coverage of 60 to 65% of the crop and then 100% of the price. However, grazing is only available at 50-55. For SDA limited resource veteran farmers, beginning farmer or ranchers, there is a 50% reduction in premium. And again, there is an AGI requirement limitation of 900,000 on this program. There are payment limitations of $125,000 under the NAP program. And however, if you have buy-up coverage, the payment limitation does get increased to 300,000. Next. Our emergency loans are available in cases of disaster. As the Secretary of Agriculture has declared all the counties in California disaster counties for drought or contiguous. So you are able to apply for loans with FSA. The only requirement there is that you have to be able to show that you're not able to get commercial outside from a commercial bank at a reasonable terms and conditions. Deadline to sign up is within 18 months of the disaster, and you would apply at your local FSA office. Next, for the two congressional districts that we're looking at, there's a contact information for Mendocino Lake counties. Our CED there is Katie Dilbar, and then for Sonoma, Solano Napa, we have Gigi. Grover is the CED there, and there's a contact information. We have an office in Vacaville. And then for Sonoma Marin, we have an office in Petaluma. Lisa Velasquez is the CED. And for Humboldt and Del Norte, Katie also handles that office. And then for Contra Costa County, we have Stockton office handles that. Contra Costa County, Jenna is our CED there. And then for Trinity, our office is in Reading, and Ruth Ford is the CED there. Of course, you can always go to fsa.usda.gov or farmers.gov for fact sheets and finding an office near you if you're not able to get this information from here. And also for general information regarding FSA programs. As a matter of fact, on farmers.gov, it has programs about NRCS, RD, and Risk Management Agency as well. I think that's pretty much what I have from FSA. I'll turn it over to Carlos, I believe. Next.
Thank you, Nuvdeep, and we'll make sure that all the participants get a copy of these phone numbers. So thank you. Carlos?
Good afternoon, Congressman Thompson, and good afternoon, Congressman Huffman, and our colleagues from USDA, as well as other colleagues and farmers that are participating today. Give me great pleasure that being presenting today to you. And we have on the audience as well Ray Ann Dubé, who's our assistant state conservationist for programs. We also have Greg Norris, who is our state conservation engineer who manage our watershed programs. And we also have Jolene Lau, who is our director of public affairs, in case there's any information or questions about communication, etc. Then we need to provide. What we would like to do is, excuse me, I'm trying to get my notes here. What I'd like to do is, if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so NRCS has been working since since the past drought in 2012, and at the start in 2012 and 2016. We have been working collaboratively with farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, and also working with our partners with CDFA, district resource conservation districts, and others entities promoting drought resiliency. And the key has been drought resiliency, working together and building and providing assistance to farmers and ranchers and forest land users with our technical assistance and our practices and our financial assistance to implement conservation on the ground. Our focus has been in this for this current drought that's been, as Navdeep well explained, that the secretary announced over a drought for 50 states, 50 counties in California, but it's actually the state with Governor Newsom expanding, declaring drought in most of the state as well. We are focusing our efforts in providing that financial assistance and that technical assistance. And what we're working on, first of all, is building drought resiliency. Building soil health by increasing water holding capacity. That's one of the priorities that we're doing. Also, one of the areas that has been severely impacted in the state has been our range. And we're protecting impacted range through increased grazing management practices, fencing, rotational grazing, irrigation systems to maintain that grazing systems in place so that our livestock can continue to benefit from sustainable grazing. Also, protecting impacted forest lands. And this is a conversation that I know I have had with Congressman Thompson's office and also with with Congressman Huffman about the fires and wildfires that have affected your district, but also California. We no longer have a fire season. We used to say, oh, we're in our fire season now, X, Y, or Z, but now it's year round. So how do our focus is working with those non-industrial forest land users, and also working with other entities that deal with public forests like Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, to jointly protect those forests and implement practices that reduce the severity or reduce the impact when there is a wildfire. And also the other priority that we have on building drought resiliency is optimizing the use of irrigation water in California. That's an area where our farmers, our ranchers are doing really excellent, and there's always more opportunities and more avenues to implement, whether it's a drip irrigation system, or actually if you're doing flooding, to enhance the efficiency of that flooding system, and others, and implement irrigation water management as part of their whole operation, so that the right amount of water at the right time is being applied to the crops to continue growing as sustainable crops in the state. Next, if we can. So one of the things what NRCS as an agency, we had a variety of programs. We have the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, which is our flagship program, basically, that provides funding statewide for implementation of conservation practices in the state. On an average, on a yearly average, we receive about $90 to $92 million for EQIP, for the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, to be implemented, that funding statewide. And I'll be talking about in a minute as to what has been dedicated for drought in each for this period. But also we have the Conservation Stewardship Program that provide enhancements to those practices, and also our easement programs that we have utilized those too in order to protect farmland and or implement or restore wetlands in the state. And in addition, we have our one of the main programs that involve partners, which is the program for conservation partnership program, RCPP. And that program, what it does is basically uses partners along the state, partners with whether it's academia, public entities, non-government organizations, and regional conservation partnership program. Sorry, I was for a minute I drew blank on the R. With the regional conservation partnership program, implement all those partners with funding and match it 1-to-1 for a specific area. We have programs, we have RCPP projects actually in the Sonoma area where have been dedicated to water conservation and other type of practices and wildfire protection as well. But as it relates to the drought and as it relates to what we're offering right now and what we are implementing immediately with our resources, we are allocating statewide about $5.2 million that we just received for drought. And this is across all land uses. It is utilizing the EQIP program. And also we accept applications continuously. A farmer doesn't have to wait for a set time to come into the office, whether it's our Napa office or our Petaluma office, to apply. They can come at any point and apply, go into the office and apply into those two or any of the other 53 offices that we have statewide and apply for programs. So we have that $5.2 million dedicated from EQIP. Then initially, the state and joining with our friends in Oregon, we share the climate basin, and immediately we put in funding for put in cover crops in the climate basin as part of the practices that we are supporting for the climate. Unfortunately, we cannot produce water, right? We can't build water, but we can help with the farmers and with those ranchers in installing either cover crops, residue management practices. And we're also looking at irrigation water management systems, but that's year round. But immediately we have the sign up that is going to be occurring at the end of May, beginning of June for soil stabilization. Basically, that is the priority that we are putting in. And again, we're coordinating these efforts with Oregon. And then we also, this is new to the 2018 Farm Bill, which is $2.3 million allocated for conservation incentive contracts. And this is kind of, it's kind of in between the EQIP and Conservation Stewardship Program. And what it does is it allows us to focus on priority resources in the state. I've been coordinating with Secretary Ross in this effort as their funding that they have been receiving and will be receiving hopefully from the state, and prioritizing our efforts and leverage our resources to promote soil health and habitat. And habitat includes increasing the pollinators in the state. Again, the sign up will be advertised very soon. We hope that in the next 3 weeks, we're gonna have that sign up to implement those $2.3 million invested in conservation. Next slide, please. So again, I spoke about this at the beginning, and as an agency, NRCS have different programs dedicated or used for priorities in different, whether it's environmental improvement, building stewardship, the watershed, or partnership. I mentioned environmental improvement EQIP. under ECWAG, we have the Environmental Quality Incentive Program that is utilized, again, our flagship program to provide financial assistance to implement, whether it's irrigation systems, animal waste utilization. And the area of Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman, we are looking at, I forgot to mention, we have, I call her my alter ego, Kay Joy Barge, who is my area director out of the Salinas office. And under Kay leadership, we had a program in Alameda where we are restoring ponds, ponds that were built 50 years ago, ponds that mostly those ponds are located in ranches that have worked with us with NRCS. We are restoring those ponds. And this is an area that Sonoma, Mendocino, and other counties are very interested in imitating and replicating, I would say, that program that Alameda and Contra Costa counties have done very successfully. So that's one of the areas that we're looking at doing, and we're doing it, and we will do that through the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And the stewardship, as I mentioned, is going through the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, conservation, which is a program that also pay for practices that are basically taking it to the next level. And we have sign-ups. Again, you can sign up for that program year round. You can come into our office and sign up. But also, one of the programs that I didn't mention at the beginning, and where Greg Norris is our lead on this, is on the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, or EWP. That program, we have utilized that very successfully when we have had fires in the state, where we come after the fires to restore or implement stabilization on the hillsides, but also working to restore forest land that has been impacted. And with our foresters, with our engineers, and working with a sponsor at the local level, we have been able to implement that Emergency Watershed Protection Program. In addition to that, we also manage the Small Watershed Protection Program, or PL 566, as it's known in the agency. And that's more of a watershed approach. That's something that we have been in conversations recently with Sonoma, Water Authority, to see if we can utilize somewhat of the PL 566 as a program to implement. And last but not least, as I mentioned, the partnership program, the RCPP, which we have 20 RCPPs throughout the state that goes for a variety of landscape or priority resources in the state. And the beauty about this is that we work in coordination with partners at the local level, at the state level, or sometimes even multi-state level, to seek funding, to leverage funding, to prioritize that funding, whether it's for water conservation, water quality, wildlife habitat, air quality, or wildfire habitat. So with that, I think that was my last slide. Next, just to make sure that that's the case. And again, thank you so much for allowing us to present. If there's any information of any of the participants here about where's your closest office, they can go into farmers.gov to find your nearest office. And yeah, in the congressional district, we have Sonoma, we have Petaluma, we have Napa, we also have Eureka. That is also another office that Congressman Huffman serves. So with that, thank you so much for allowing us the time, and we'll be in the presentation to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Carlos. Jeff, you're recognized.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Congressman, for allowing us to present our programs. I'm the one agency that you guys will probably never see, where our programs are serviced and provided by crop insurance agents and the crop insurance providers. We're mainly in the background. We oversee the crop insurance programs. We make sure that all the data is correct, set the rates, set the yields, and just oversee the program. So we don't have offices. We're here, but we want to make sure everything works well with crop insurance. So as an overview, that's kind of what we do. I also wanted to mention before I started that in your Zoom link for this meeting, you have the handouts there too. And there's a couple of general handouts that are really good. One has a good matrix of the programs that are out there. And also you could go to the farmers.gov or our individual websites to find additional information. So with that, I will go to the next slide. Like I mentioned, you won't see us. We oversee the program. Crop insurance is by the various insurance providers. California has about 10 or 11 different insurance providers out there. You have agents that you will actually contact if there's a loss or to obtain a policy. I do want to mention that all 2021 sales closing dates have passed, so you cannot go back now and get crop insurance. Much like most insurances, you can't purchase the insurance after the damage is already done. So the 2021 sales closing dates have passed. If there is a crop that you're interested in getting crop insurance into 2022, I would say contact a agent that's out there and they can explain it to you, or you can contact my office and we'll get you more information also. Next slide. Most of the major crops in both of these districts, District 2 and District 5, are covered by crop insurance. We have apiculture, apples, grapes, which is the biggest one in the districts, both districts, pasture, rangeland, forage, olives, pears, peaches, and walnuts and livestock programs. But if your crop's not listed here, you could still request crop insurance. And if we have a program available, we can do a written agreement. Also, if your crop's not listed here, or even if it is listed here, you could get a whole farm revenue protection coverage program. And we look at your revenue over the past few years and compare it to this year's revenue. If there's a shortfall, you may qualify for an indemnity. Our programs for crop insurance covers losses due to adverse weather, natural disaster, and unfortunately, drought is there, but we also do wildfire losses and the smoke taint that's a result of the wildfires. Next slide. We have different types of coverage. We can protect you against production in some policies. In other policies, we will protect you against price losses or revenue losses. There's all different kinds of policies we have. Each crop is a little bit different. So we do try to have a program that will fit your needs. We also do prevent planted for some annual crops. All of the permanent tree crops do not have a prevented planted payment, but we do prevented planted for some annual crops. In both of these districts, there's over $600 billion of liability that we cover every year. Next slide. Okay, these programs, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different things you can do to it. You can set different coverage levels, how much of a loss, meaning how much of a loss do you want to cover. We can look at your price selection. Do you want to cover it at full price or do you want to just cover it a little bit? We have minimal coverage programs, maximum coverage programs, and the cost of it is a premium that you pay. It's all based on the liability amount. And however, the government does do a premium subsidy for all crop insurance. So if on average, about 65% of your premium is paid for under a premium subsidy. So you can look at the premium subsidy as a discount of your crop insurance. Next slide. Okay, so I went through this really quickly, but there's really 10 things that you really need to know about crop insurance. Not every crop is insurable. Well, kind of true. We do have the whole farm program, and the whole farm program does cover your full farm revenue. Not every insurable crop can be insured. There's requirements for every crop. For example, for trees or for grapes, they have to be of a certain age before we cover them. Insureds pay a subsidized premium. I threw two things in there, but there is a cost of the program. And we have subsidies, which are discounts. They're not payments. Like I said before, 65% of your premium is usually covered. If the higher levels of coverage that you get, the lower amount of subsidy there is. You basically, if you're paying for higher coverage, we're not going to pay for a greater percentage of the premium. And I think I just covered that with number 5. Number 6, cost of the insurance is the same no matter who the company or the agent is. That's why we oversee the program. If you go to one agent, they should be quoting you within the federal crop insurance program the same quote that you would get from any other agent. The agents are differentiated by the level of service they provide, and a lot of times the familiarity with the crop, but the cost should be the same. The losses must be due to weather, natural disaster, or pests. That includes insects and disease, so it must not be a man-made disaster, so to speak. Wildfire losses, if they're caused by arson, because we get that question a lot, what if the wildfire is caused by arson? Will we cover that? Generally, there is generally 99.9% of the time, there is an exasperating condition that has caused the damage. So we will cover nearly all wildfire incidences, even if it's caused by arson, because of the exacerbating conditions. Can you just do poor farming practices and collect a crop insurance payment? No, you can't. You must have good farming practices all the way through. You can't just manufacture your own loss due to your own issues that you've created upon yourself. Do we review these policies? Certainly. We do review them for abuse, vulnerabilities, we review them for improvements. But certainly people have tried to defraud crop insurance, and both the companies have their own compliance divisions, but the government does too. And we do go after fraud and abuse. However, the percentage of that is, the percentage of abuse is very low. Most importantly, if you need more information, contact an agent. We have agent locator tools in our RMA website at USDA.RMA or at www.rma.usda.gov. There is a tool for an agent locator. You can look for an agent there. Or you could, if you really need help with it, like you said, you could always contact me or my office and we could direct you where that website is. We cannot recommend a particular agent, but we could point you to a location where you can find all the agents. But they're the ones that you will see. They're the ones that you'll talk to. They're the ones that you'll sign up for a policy. They're the ones that will take care of the loss reports. And then a loss adjuster would come out to your farm and they belong to the company. They're not employed by the agent. They belong to the insurance provider, and the insurance provider will send out one of their employees to look at the loss. If you don't agree with their determination, you will have arbitration rights. And lastly, here's my contact information. The easiest way, as we're mostly serving from home right now, is email at jeff.yasui@usda.gov. My deputy director is Ruben Saavedra. He can also take emails, and it's the same email format, ruben.saavedra@usda.gov. Our website's there. Our office, which I go to maybe once or twice a week at the most, is there with our phone number. The phone number, if you call it in, we've set it up so it will go, any voice messages will go to our computer. So you won't get anybody directly, but we will get your voice message. So leave a message or send us an email and we can take care of it that way. That's all, Congressman. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you very much. Patty, you're up.
Hi there. First of all, Congressman, both of you, thank you so much for inviting us to participate. We really appreciate it. With me today, I have Lisa Butler, our Community Facilities Program Director, Daniel Cardona, Water and Environmentally Program Director. Oh, hold on. I see something here. Okay, there. We also have Debakar Barua, who's our Rural Business and Cooperative Services Loan Specialist, and Robert Machado with the Rural Development Telecom Program. Next, please. I will tell you a little bit about USDA Rural Development and then talk a little bit about each of these programs. Rural development is committed to helping improve the economy and quality of life in rural America. Through our programs, we help rural Americans in many ways. We offer loans, grants, and loan guarantees to help create jobs, support economic development, and essential services such as housing, healthcare, first responder services and equipment, and water, electric, and communications infrastructure. We promote economic development by supporting loans to businesses through banks, credit unions, and commodity managed lending pools. We offer technical assistance and information to help agricultural producers and cooperatives get started and improve the effectiveness of their operations. Now, having said all of that, I'll tell you a little bit about each of these programs. First is the Rural Energy for America program. Next. The Rural Energy for America program, also known as REAP, provides guaranteed loan financing and grant funding to agricultural producers and rural small businesses for renewable energy systems or to make energy efficiency improvements. Funds can be used to help farmers facing increased irrigation costs due to drought conditions, develop energy efficient or renewable energy projects to reduce irrigation costs. For energy efficient projects, such as replacing inefficient water pumps with more efficient units, grants can range from $1,500 to $250,000. For renewable energy projects, such as solar systems that can be used to generate electricity, for agriculture irrigation pumps instead of generators, grants can range from $2,500 to $500,000. Keep in mind, these projects must be located in rural areas and towns of up to 50,000 in population. Next, please. The Drought Assistance for Farm Labor Housing, this program is managed by the national office under our multifamily housing program. There are a variety of options available to help farm labor workers maintain affordable rental housing during a drought disaster. On the slide, we've provided contact information. Becky can provide additional details and more information, but of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of us and we can put you in contact with the right person. Next. Now we will talk a little bit about water and environmental programs. Next. So under this group, we have two specific programs. The first one is Emergency Community Water Assistance Grants, also known as ECWAG, and we have search grants. Next, please. Through ECWAG, we can provide grants to help eligible rural communities recover from or prepare for emergencies that result in a decline in capacity to provide safe, reliable drinking water for households and businesses. My apologies, I lost my place there. Applicants include most state and local government entities, nonprofit organizations, and federally recognized tribes. So these programs, you'll have to go through your local agencies to apply. A couple of things we can do for repairs to breaks or leaks in existing water lines and related maintenance grants can go up to $150,000. For construction of new water source, intake and or treatment facility or water line extensions, grants can go up to $1 million. Again, projects must be located in rural areas and towns of up to 10,000 in population with a median household income of less than $62,883. Next. Search planning grants. So search planning grants and pre-development planning grants. Funding can be utilized for pre-development studies and reports associated with the submittal of an application to USDA. Eligible areas, rural areas with a population of 2,500 or less, median household income below 50,306, and there is a maximum grant amount of $30,000 to pay for these costs. Next, USDA also offers a variety of telecom services. Rural utilities programs provide a variety of loans and grants to build and expand broadband networks. The telecom program maintains a staff of general field representatives stationed around the country. These GFRs are an integral part of our outreach delivery system. They meet regular with borrowers and serve as a conduit for the borrowers and headquarters staff. These GFRs will be your point of contact for your broadband needs, as they are part of a national office program not run by the state. Next. Community facilities. This is a large program for us. As you can tell from the slide, Community Facilities Loan and Grant Program is also a program that would be worked through your local community. It can help fund irrigation structures, channel bed stabilization, irrigation canals, irrigation ditches and lining, irrigation land leveling, pond sealing or lining, water storage facility, and water recharge. Applicants include most state and local government entities, special districts, nonprofit organizations, and federally recognized tribes, rather than individuals. Applications for this program are accepted year-round. And that concludes a brief rundown of our programs for drought assistance. Our experts are on the line. They can answer your questions and provide additional details. They are the ones that have more information. We can also provide direct contact information, but on this slide, you can see our website where you can get additional information. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Patty, thank you. And thanks to everyone who's with us, who's presenting and working on these important programs. I think what we'll do now is go to questions. I know folks have typed some questions into the chat, and maybe Danusha, can you read those questions?
Yep, I can do that. Some of the questions were answered on the chat, but I'm going to reiterate them just so that everyone has a chance to hear the answers. So the first question is a pretty easy one that we'll throw over to FSA. And the question is, do chickens qualify as livestock?
No, this is chickens do not, as they are not grazing animals. So at least the agency does not classify them. However, you can contact our local FSA office, and we can always look into it further.
Thank you.
Do they qualify under some program if you're a poultry farmer?
You do. You can apply for the CFAP program, which is the coronavirus assistance program. So you can apply. Their chickens are eligible under that. However, not particularly under the livestock programs.
And so there's no water programs that they qualify for?
Correct. They do not. We can look into it. However, at this point, they do not.
Yeah, Congressman, from NRCS standpoint, poultry, where they would qualify would be for if there is more for animal waste, if we were working on animal waste on poultry farms or the structures, that's where they would qualify, and they would qualify under the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. But as Navdeep said, for water purposes, we don't have any programs under EQIP for chickens that they would qualify for.
And Carlos, are they excluded from other programs that other producers qualify for?
No, they're not. They're not. I mean, they qualify under EQIP. Any practices that are related to poultry, and I'll have Rayanne can jump in and help me here more specific. But under EQIP, any practices that are related to poultry, whether it's an animal waste system, let's say that on a poultry farm, we have to work on dealing with the animal waste. That's where they will fall under. Ray, can you anything else you would like to add, ma'am?
The only thing that I would add is that all of our practice standards identify the livestock that are eligible to receive the treatment. So I would defer back to Navdeep's recommendation, which is definitely reach out to your local office to start that conversation with them. because we definitely want to make sure we're doing our due diligence to look over everything before we give a final answer on whether or not a certain livestock is eligible to receive some kind of a practice.
It may be something that Jarrett and I might want to look into.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question.
Thank you, everyone. This question is from Vince Trotter. Between all of these drought-related programs, plus disaster loans, plus the continuing assistance related to COVID, our local Sonoma-Marin FSA office is inundated with applications. Will there be any funding or staffing support forthcoming to help them respond quickly to this emergency?
Well, Jackie is not on. She's also our, she's acting our acting SCD, and then she also is our administrative officer. However, I know we are working with that office and providing them the assistance that they need. We did have the CED there was out for a little while due to some medical issues. She is back now. So that we should be, if your application is delayed, give me a call and we can look into it. I believe we are getting back on track as far as getting those applications processed. Our CFAP program was on hold for a little while due to the new administration, processing, just reviewing all the CFRs. However, that is open now and we are processing payments. I am not really aware of any huge backlogs at this point. However, if your application is held up, give me a call and we can look into it a little bit more.
And I believe, Brooke, maybe you could give some information about the sign up on June 30th. That might.
Yeah. Yes, I put it in the Q&A, but the Sonoma Farm Bureau at the their Santa Rosa office is hosting our staff and staff from other offices for sign up, and that will be on June 30th. And I haven't gotten all the details on it yet, but we will have the Sonoma office is putting together a flyer, and then we'll help share that. And I can make sure that everyone on this call will get that information, that flyer, when it comes out.
Very good.
Could you, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike. Could you just tell us what a sign up is? Because I think there might be some questions as to what a sign up is.
Oh, it's just for those drought related programs, or just for getting kind of more of assistance. As mentioned, a lot of our offices were closed during COVID. And this helps us have more staff, more producers able to come to one spot without, having to be in a small office or have to make an appointment.
Yeah, so the county, the offices who will be there, they'll be taking applications for your livestock forage program, or additional costs for water hauling, and then they can provide assistance with TAP and basically all the programs that I went over. If you're interested in applying, they can take your application or at least get you started in the process of applying.
Thank you. Here's another question that I think we'll start with the congressman, and if any of the experts want to weigh in as well, please feel free. This is from Rip. We seem to face this issue on a regular basis. The future of water supply for ag lies with increasing use of reclaimed water. Storage and infrastructure are needed. Do either of you have any thoughts on how to increase storage facilities and infrastructure to provide reclaimed water for ag use?
Will you repeat the question, please? Speak a little louder.
Sure. Yes. The future of water supply for ag lies with increasing use of reclaimed water. Storage and infrastructure are needed. Do either of you have any thoughts on how to increase storage facilities and infrastructure to provide reclaimed water for ag use?
Yeah, Jared, you just introduced legislation. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, thank you. So my Future Act, we introduced this week. This is a couple years in development, but the concept here is several $billions of investments that would leverage a lot more than that from state and local sources to invest in exactly what I think this question is asking about, the kind of no regrets local and regional resiliency investments for water supply that we need, not pitting farms against fish or regions against each other, which we have done too much of in the past, but really looking at a very aggressive new play on water recycling and reuse, among other tools. And you talked about limitations on recycling. You're exactly right. We've got folks, one of the witnesses in my hearing today was from Southern Nevada, partnering with Metropolitan Water District on a massive water recycling project, would be one of the biggest in US history. The Bureau of Reclamation has a statutory cap of $20 million that they can participate. They can't go further than that. And any other type of water project, they could go into the hundreds of millions if you could actually bring a lot of water online and solve a problem, but not with recycling. So it's one of the many ways where we've got to start kind of liberating these water recycling restrictions and letting folks deliver the wet water that's needed where it's needed.
Very good.
Thank you. And this is a question again that maybe multiple experts and the congressman may want to weigh in on. What happens if our reservoirs go dry?
That we'd be in a real hurt, but we've seen the water levels go down markedly. This year they're all-time lows. We've been experiencing this over the years. This isn't the first time we've been there. I remember seeing the old bridge and some of the old structures up at Mount Shasta. We've seen it at Lake Berryessa over in Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino. We have a huge demand on our water resources, and if it doesn't rain, we can't keep up with demand. And there's a lot that we can do. I'm one who believes we ought to add storage where we can. And some places like Los Vaqueros in Contra Costa County, they've got a proposal. It's in the southern part of the district that I represent. They have a proposal to expand capacity there. And on a scale of easy to hard, that would fall on the easy but expensive end of the scale. And there's always talk about increasing capacity on Shasta Reservoir, and that would fall at the other end of the scale, somewhere between hard and impossible. You talk about new storage facilities. Sykes Reservoir up in the Glen Calusa area is one that's on the books. That would fall on the easy end of the spectrum. But again, it's costly. There's a lot of talk, and has been for years, about building a facility at the Auburn Dam, and that is beyond impossible and borders on ridiculous. There's groundwater recharge that we need to be doing, and there's a lot of possibilities there. There's conservation is most clearly the biggest bang for the buck. And then something that Jared and I've been working a little bit on is the idea of indoor farming, kind of not new, not a new concept, but the growth in indoor farming. There's one that Jared and I are very familiar with, that are doing remarkable work in growing great produce at a reasonable cost, a lot less water use, and year-round crops. And this is developing quickly, and it brings to the table not only edibles, but it also they have the ability to build out in communities that where they can deliver their produce much cheaper than having to truck it from an historic agriculture area. So there's a lot that we can do. Desalination is always, and whenever we have a drought, I probably had 30 letters this week about desal, and those are doable. But you're not going to plant one over in Jarrett's district on the coast of Mendocino and take care of all of our water needs. They have environmental problems. They're extremely expensive. But there's areas that you can do it, especially in treating brackish water. And this is something that can be used in conjunction with enhanced groundwater recharge. So there's a lot of possibilities, but the sad thing is that there doesn't seem to be any enthusiasm for this stuff until we're in a crisis. And Jarrett and I have been two people who pushed this stuff for a long time, but until there's a crisis, it's hard to get somebody to write the check.
Well, I'll chime in and echo that. So often when ever desalination is discussed, people say, "Oh, it's $2,000 an acre foot. It's just not viable." Let me tell you, this summer, farmers in the Central Valley will be paying $2,000 an acre foot to get whatever water they can get, and they'll be glad when they get it. So it's all about scarcity and wet water when you need it. And I think adding that to the portfolio in Southern California makes a lot of sense, and some other coastal areas. But to the direct question about what happens if our reservoirs dry up, that's obviously the scary worst case scenario. I think the whole point of these summits and hearings and activities that Mike and I are involved in is to make sure that our community and our region is much more proactive so that we don't get to that point. If your reservoir is dry, you really are in trouble. And we do know what happens at that point. People start sinking deeper wells. They start drawing down groundwater levels in really untenable ways that cause subsidence and other impacts that will take years, if not decades, to resolve. So to me, one of the things we really have to focus on as we grapple with this challenge is not just the surface water resources we have, which you can see with your own eyes, but that massive groundwater resource that is 40% of our water supply in the state of California. But we don't see it, we don't think about it, we don't really regulate it, and until very recently, we haven't seriously tried to manage it. I think one of the obvious things as we go forward is taking better care of our groundwater basins. And the state has begun now to do that. Hopefully at the federal level, we can partner with the state and make sure that neither surface nor groundwater ever runs out in a critical drought.
Thank you so much. Did any of the experts want to weigh in on that? From USDA?
What I would like to add, and although, the congressman, both Congressman Thompson and Huffman talk about statewide projects, from NRCS standpoint, one of the things through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, what we've done is, and we actually have a practice, and I have Greg Norris here, who's, as I mentioned, the state conservation engineer, and he manages that part or that portfolio. We are testing an interim practice, which is groundwater recharge. That practice, that conservation practice, is being tested by other partners. And what we are doing in the agency is trying it as a pilot in a few places in the state to see how that practice works, so that we can actually pay for that under ECWAG, under the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. That's one of the things that we are doing for water, so to speak, not creating a statewide project, but yet at a local level or at a watershed level, testing one of those that practice. In addition, through the Watershed Protection Program, through the PL 566, the Small Watershed Protection Program, we have worked with sponsors to work on either rebuilding some of the small reservoirs that were built under NRCS, or actually doing studies to see if we can build small watersheds or small reservoirs in those locations. Greg, would you like to add and say a little bit more about those programs?
Yeah, sure, Carlos. My video's not working, so
Oh, no problem.
I'll just bring it up. Yes, we have a watershed program that we're working actually with Sonoma County right now. We're evaluating the Matanzas Dam, evaluating the condition of it and the possibility of rehabilitating it. It's over 50 years old, so we're looking at that currently. And also we're looking at in this area of city of Santa Rosa, we're looking at evaluating the flood impacts of surface runoff. That really doesn't have much to do with drought, but that is an example of some local watershed projects we have going on. Let me also reiterate, Carlos, what you said earlier. And the question came in, it was kind of vague. It said, what happens if our reservoirs aren't filling up? And we don't know, certainly Congressman Thompson talked about major regional reservoirs, I believe that's what he was envisioning, but this could also be scaled down to on-farm or on-ranch reservoirs that have gone dry, that have really left producers high and dry, if you will. Their cattle don't, or whatever livestock don't have access to water. So I want to reiterate what you mentioned earlier about the program kind of we have going over in Contra Costa and Alameda counties that could be transferable over to Sonoma County, about rehabilitating existing old ranch farm ponds that maybe aren't functioning or holding as much water as they used to. Through our EQIP program, we could rehabilitate those so that when it does rain, they actually store a decent amount of water, rather than being silted in, or maybe the dam's not working well anymore or whatever. But those are some options for on-ranch, and might give, obviously if you have a severe drought, they still could go dry, but maybe if you just have a couple of years of dry weather like we are right now experiencing, maybe they might be able to store water longer into the season. So I just wanted to reiterate that, Carlos. Thanks.
Thank you so much. There was one more question that I think should be pretty quick to answer that I wanted to get out. Who is the local contact point for REAP programs in Sonoma County? I believe that would go to you, Patty.
Yes, and I think DeBacher would be our contact for that. We can type his, Daniel may have already typed his information into the chat, but if he hasn't, we can go ahead and put it into the chat.
He did, and contact information is also included in the handouts that were sent out with the Zoom link, and we can resend the handouts with the PowerPoint that we send after this presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. One more. Here's a good question. Are there any programs besides crop insurance that can help with smoke taint damage after the event?
That's a Mike Thompson question if I've ever heard one.
Well, the specifics on the crop insurance, I believe one of the panelists should speak to that, and I can tell you what's going on with crop insurance or with smoke taint.
But what about WHIP?
And I can tell you about WHIP.
Yeah.
Who's our crop insurance person?
Jeff.
Okay, I'll get that one. Yes, we do cover smoke taint. I realize the question kind of was besides crop insurance, but if you're an insured producer and your crop is affected by smoke taint, you can report that as a cause of loss. There are some requirements. We need to get your crop lab tested. The crop insurance company will do that through their loss adjusters, and to ensure that there is a smoke taint chemical marker present. We working with Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman over the years, we've developed some ways to try to make it a little bit easier for producers to provide or get the lab test and make the processing of these losses a little bit easier. But certainly smoke taint is one of our biggest causes of loss over the last few years in this district. And I believe the amount of liability, or not the amount of liability, but I believe the amount of indemnity that went out was near 140 to 150 million dollars in these districts. I'd have to look up the number, but it was pretty high. So we did cover it.
And on the WIP program, it needs to be reauthorized for this last fire. And we're working on that now. I have legislation, Jared's a co-author, and we've been working tirelessly. Jared, I don't know how many Zooms you and I have been on. We've been on Zooms. I've set up a number of Zooms. I had one with the chairman of the Agriculture Committee, who's committed to working with us on it. He wants to go further, and I agree with his position. He doesn't think we should have to be in this constant state of reauthorizing these programs every time there is a disaster. It just puts a lot of pressure on the farmers. So he'd like to do it permanently, and I'm all for that. We've been on a Zoom with the chairman of the Agricultural Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. I've talked to the speaker and the majority leader of, I think, just short of 6 gazillion times. And today, before getting on this Zoom, I was on with the Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Vilsack, about this. And there's 2 issues. One is the WIP payments from the last, from the 2019 disaster haven't been fully paid out. And I needed to find out if we could get assurance from the Secretary that their effort to speed it up was working. And he assured me that it is, and they expect to start making another round of payments in mid-June, so next month. So this is something that's very much on our minds, and we're working it very diligently to make sure that we get this. And it's not just Napa and Sonoma and Lake. It is California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Mississippi, Texas, Iowa. It's the program WIP is wildfire and hurricane indemnification program. So any place where there's natural disaster problems for agriculture, this applies. So we're working on it. We have a good coalition of colleagues on both sides of the aisle who are plugged in on this.
Yeah, let me just add that Mike Thompson is on a mission when it comes to getting this program reauthorized. They're either going to reauthorize it or they're going to have to get a restraining order against Congressman Thompson, because he's a bulldog on this one, and we appreciate it.
Well, sometimes you need a heat-seeking missile.
Thank you. That was great. This is another question for FSA. Has state FSA approved of using ECP funds for drought-related projects? Last we heard, it was a possibility, but nothing had yet happened. Is the Sonoma-Marin County local FSA office approved and ready to process ECP applications from producers?
For Sonoma-Marin, we have not received the ECP program. It starts at the local level, so the local county committee would request that program to be authorized, and then we turn around and authorize it immediately. However, if you're interested in that program, then you can always file an application, and that will get the county committee started on making the request to the state office, and then to the national office. Drought ECP national office approval is required. However, with the current stage of our state, I don't see that as a problem. But ECP funds are, it takes a little while because you have to complete the practice, and from the time that your application is filed, it can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Probably sometimes even longer, depending on how long or what practices you're requesting and how much of an environmental review we have to complete. So that sometimes delays the payments of the program.
Thank you so much. I have a question that kind of follows on that, that I think would be for FSA as well. It is my understanding that most of our region is either in an extreme or exceptional drought. Are all the programs you have covered today open to our farmers because of these intensity classifications?
Yes, so livestock forage program, it starts at D2. You're eligible for once your county's in D2 for 8 weeks, I believe it is. Then you get 1 month worth of payment. However, as the intensity increases, once you apply, then the payments get processed automatically. You don't have to reapply. So with each of the programs, there are specific designations that are required. So for water hauling, your county has to be at D3. For emergency cane and grazing, there's some specific requirements. So each program has their requirements, but the programs that I went over, because of majority of the state is in D3, moving into D4, pretty much all the programs would be applicable.
Thank you. Is there funding for diversified vegetable farmers already using conservation practices, dry farming, no-till, drip irrigation, mulch, etc., to support either digging wells or purchasing infrastructure like tanks and pumps if we rely on water stored in the soil and no longer can count on that despite our practices? I can reread if it's long.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And with FSA, the drought, the emergency program under drought is specifically for permanent crops and livestock. I think maybe under NRCS, they could possibly do something, Carlos, I don't know, under the EQIP program.
If I heard the question correctly, Danusha, part of the question was can they build wells, and the answer is unfortunately not under EQIP for cropland. However, we can provide storage, like I said earlier, working with building ponds or building storage capacity. So for irrigation systems. And it doesn't matter what the acreage is. It could be small acreage. It can actually be for a hoop house or a greenhouse that we are promoting that as well, especially for beginning farmers and ranchers who are installing hoop houses. But yeah, basically we can pay for tanks and for the equipment to store the water, to keep the water in, and to use it for irrigation. But unfortunately we cannot pay for digging wells for cropland, for irrigation systems.
Thank you. And this is from the same person. For diversified vegetable specialty crop growers who already use water conservation practices, are there financial support options, specifically grants, to support crop loss this year if we do not already have insurance coverage through a USDA program?
With FSA, I would say no, unless there's additional program that's authorized by Congress to provide assistance for drought. Our last WIP program did include drought as a provision, which was the program that Congressman Thompson discussed, that did have a drought provision. So at this point, no, but for possibility of another additional program.
Thank you. I think this question could go to the congressman and the experts. Is there a plan to shift federal or state farm subsidy to support regenerative farming practices? For example, no-till farming.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk in the no-till farming space as to using that for better farming practices. I know people that do it. I don't know if there are any subsidies available for that. There was some talk of using that in a carbon program to provide carbon credits, and I'm not really sure where that is right now. Maybe Jarrett knows. Maybe one of the experts know.
I can't expand too much on that, Mike, but I will say that each of the last few farm bills that we've passed has included more and more support for these type of farming practices. I think I'm a big fan of regenerative ag and no-till farming, and I don't know that we'll just sort of redirect existing commodity subsidies into that. I think we'll probably pursue other types of incentives to encourage that. But Mike hit on one of the most promising, and that is, some kind of a carbon offset, because we know that there's sequestration value as we build these healthy soils in addition to the moisture retention.
From FS's perspective, I really don't have anything to add. I know there's always discussion about with regards to the conservation reserve program, including some of those practices. However, because it's a lot, our conservation reserve program is only available on non-irrigated acres. That sometimes limits the applicability in our state. But it's definitely something to consider.
Thank you. This is the last question. If anyone else has any additional questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A. This is a tough one. So, has there been any discussion on a national water program that involves moving water from one part of the country to another based on demand and supply?
Oh, Mike, can I take the first stab at that?
There's been talk about moving icebergs onto the California coast, but they had what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, somebody wanted to do water bladders, rubber water bladders, and tow them down with tugs from Alaska. And it was a few years ago, someone proposed bringing water from the Great Lakes or something, but I don't think there's been any serious conversation about this.
Yeah, it's a fun subject, because the answer is yes. People have been kind of scheming and doodling on how you might do this for decades. If you read the book Cadillac Desert, it goes into some of the more elaborate Rube Goldberg, water schemes, including bringing water down from the Yukon River in Alaska, including using nuclear bombs to build out channels. And at one point we thought that's how we were going to harness the atom. So some of these obviously were terrible ideas, and we should be glad that they didn't go forward. But we already do, frankly, move water over vast areas. You add together the federal Central Valley Project and the State Water Project in California. It is the biggest water movement and redistribution program on the planet. And there's just, but the reason that you're unlikely to see some breakthrough that solves our water needs by bringing in water from across the Continental Divide or something like that is the cost is astronomical. The unintended consequences and other impacts are extreme. And frankly, the other places would never let you take their water. So we manage water state by state. And I don't think there's too many states that are ready to let California just sort of open a spigot and tap into to what they have. We do have tools though, and we've talked about some of those. I think our efforts going forward are best served by focusing on those things that we can do, and there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit that can make us much more resilient.
It would to do a big water movement scheme like that would require that we first take all of the infrastructure money and build new courthouses, because the litigation would take more than 30 lifetimes.
Thank you. There is one question, a follow-up question that I think it's for NRCS. Do we submit applications? I think they might be talking about EQIP. Please, do we submit applications in the next few weeks before we know if and how much assistance we might need by September? I irrigate 18 acres of grapes in Napa from a well. I must anticipate what will happen to the water table.
Yeah, so if you're requesting assistance through EQIP, if the person that's asking the question needs assistance, he or she can go at any point, at any time. I would recommend that you go as soon as possible and submit your application with the local office. And we do have a local office in Napa, and that office is under K. Joy Barsh, who is the area director, but we have a district conservationist in that office and staff that will take that application, evaluate that, work with you, work with the farmer to determine what kind of assistance he or she needs. And the same applies not just for Napa or Petaluma, it applies to any of the 58 counties in the state. We have 55 offices that cover the 58 counties. And we have staff in all of those 55 offices, whether it's a range conservationist, an engineer, biologists, foresters. We are increasing our number of foresters due to the need in the state for more forestry assistance, and soil conservationists, of course. And I'd be remiss if I don't mention part of my staff that I left at the beginning that are in charge of those offices. First, I mentioned K. Joy Barsh out of our Salinas office. And also I have Tony Sinceri out of our area office in Red Bluff. These are the two area directors that oversees most, the congressional districts where Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman have their constituents. But we also have offices in Fresno, area offices in Fresno, and also in San Bernardino. And in addition, we provide technical assistance. We have Hudson Minshew, who is our state agronomist. He's right now our acting ecological science lead. And also for communication purposes, as I said, if we have to, like today, we're participating through the NUSHA with Congressman Huffman and Thompson. We have a public affairs and outreach office that provides support and provide assistance in providing information on our different programs. And with us, we have Christine Chavez, who is our outreach specialist, one of our outreach specialists, along with Jolene Lau, who is the Director of Public Affairs and Outreach. All these individuals, along with the other more than 325 employees and counting that we have in the state, are ready to help you, and we are ready to assist you in providing not only financial assistance, but technical assistance to address your natural resources concerns.
Carlos, this is Christine Chavez. I just wanted to let people know I put my email in the chat. If anybody needs help finding their local office, just email me and I can direct you to the office that services you.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is that it for the questions, Anusha?
Actually, we have one more question that I think different programs may want to weigh in on. For existing federal USDA program funding announcement deadlines, will there be any flexibility for moving these deadlines so that awards can be granted in a more timely manner to assist with getting projects started this year? For example, the next RCPP announcement isn't scheduled to be released until summer of this year, and this could be a useful program for off-stream pond construction.
So Ray, can you answer that question, please? Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I did type a response in there, and essentially what I said in the response is that RCPP is funded annually based on the fiscal year. So this next announcement for projects that is coming out in the summer will be using fiscal year 22 funds, and the fiscal year 22 funds don't become available until after the fiscal year rolls over. So they put the announcement out early, which would be at the end of the summer, so that as soon as the fiscal year rolls over, we can make those selections and start moving forward on putting those projects together with the awardees.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, and I also offered Amber Till her email address in the chat there. Apologies, I don't know if that chat is seen by everyone, but we do have an RCPP coordinator in the state of California that can help with anyone who is interested in putting together a partnership proposal. And I'll just defer to Christine Chavez, who just announced that she can get folks in touch with anyone as needed for assistance. Christine can also help with getting you in touch with Amber as needed. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. That was the last question, Mike.
All right. Well, Danusia, thank you for managing this this webinar, and to all of our experts who are on, thank you very much. You're a wealth of knowledge. I think both Jared and I have worked with you off and on for a long time, and we've always found you very, very helpful, and we're very appreciative of your public service. So thank you. Jared, it's always a pleasure to be on with you, and I look forward to working through this crisis together, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver some relief from our constituents. And I have nothing else to say other than thank you. Jared, do you want to say any words in closing?
Just thank you for convening us here today, Mike, and to the folks that were our panelists and who run these important programs. To some, the information today might have seemed technical and overwhelming, but I think there were a lot of people in the agricultural space that really appreciate the information-rich presentation and just the work that you do day in and day out. It's not always appreciated publicly, but it should be. Because you're helping people through a difficult time. So thank you for that. And thanks, Mike, for including me today.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Be safe. And hopefully next time we'll be able to do these things in person. Thank you.
Thank you.